It started as just another interview, another round of bright lights, polite laughter, and the endless stream of questions that Dakota Johnson and Jamie Dornan had answered together 100 times before. They were sitting side by side on a small stage in Los Angeles, promoting a new project that reunited them after years of going their separate ways. Jamie looked relaxed, charming as always, wearing his easy grin that made people forget how guarded he could be. Dakota, meanwhile, looked radiant, a calm confidence in her eyes that came with age and experience. For years, fans had whispered about their chemistry, their closeness, their invisible connection that seemed to defy acting. And though both had always brushed off the rumors, the tension between them had never quite faded. About halfway through the interview, the host smiled mischievously and leaned forward. "All right," she said, "we're going to have a little fun. Dakota, we have to ask, who's your dream man?" The question hung in the air like a spark waiting to ignite. The audience laughed, expecting a joke, and Jamie chuckled too, glancing toward Dakota as if to say, "Here we go again." But instead of laughing it off, Dakota went quiet. Her smile softened, her eyes dropped to her lap for a moment. When she looked up, something in her expression had changed. She exhaled slowly. "My dream man?" she repeated. "He's not perfect. He's a little stubborn, a little complicated. But he makes me feel seen." The crowd giggled, but Dakota wasn't joking. Her voice trembled slightly, and then she said the words that froze everyone in the room. "My dream man is someone I already know." A murmur rippled through the audience. The host blinked in surprise. Cameras zoomed in. Dakota's eyes flickered, just for a second, toward Jamie Dornan. Jamie didn't move, he didn't smile, he didn't laugh. His body went still, and for a brief, electric moment, their eyes met. The air between them felt heavier than the stage lights, thicker than the polite laughter trying to fill the silence. The host tried to play it off. "Oh wow, that's mysterious," she said, laughing nervously. "Care to give us a name?" Dakota's lips curved into the faintest smile. "No," she replied softly. "I think he already knows." The room erupted, gasps, cheers, applause, but Jamie said nothing. He simply looked down, his fingers tightening around the water bottle in his hands. His face was unreadable, but his eyes gave him away. Shock, confusion, maybe even something deeper, something he'd spent years trying to suppress. The clip hit the internet before the interview even ended. Fans dissected every second of it, the tone in Dakota's voice, the way Jamie froze, the millisecond glance between them that felt like a confession of its own. Within hours, hashtags like #Dakota's confession, #DreammanJamie, and #SpeechlessDornan were trending worldwide. Some called it romantic, others called it reckless, but everyone agreed on one thing. There was something real in that moment. Jamie's team stayed quiet, no statements, no clarifications. But eyewitnesses claimed that after the interview ended, Jamie barely said a word. He gave Dakota a polite hug, whispered something too low for the microphones to catch, and left the stage quickly. Behind the scenes, Dakota sat alone in her dressing room, staring at her reflection in the mirror. Her hands were still shaking. She hadn't planned to say it, not like that. It had just slipped out, unfiltered, honest. Maybe too honest. A crew member knocked on her door gently. "You okay?" She smiled faintly, blinking away the emotion in her eyes. "Yeah," she said, "I just meant what I said." Meanwhile, Jamie was already in his car, the city lights blurring outside the window. His manager was talking beside him, something about headlines, damage control, but Jamie wasn't listening. He was hearing her voice again and again. "He's someone I already know." He thought of all the years they'd spent side by side, the laughter, the trust, the late-night conversations between takes. He remembered the way she'd look at him sometimes, not as a co-star, but as if she saw something deeper. Something even he couldn't name. For the first time in a long while, Jamie didn't have a script. He didn't know what to say or how to react. He only knew that something had shifted, in her, in him, in everything. By morning, Every entertainment outlet in the world had one headline. Dakota Johnson confesses her dream man is someone she already knows. Jamie Dornan's reaction says it all. And while the world debated what it meant, the two people at the center of it all were left in silence. Dakota with the weight of her truth, and Jamie with the haunting question echoing in his mind. Did she just say what I've been too afraid to admit all along? The next morning, Jamie Dornan woke to chaos. His phone was vibrating non-stop. Missed calls, text messages, endless notifications. His team had already sent him a dozen headlines, all screaming the same thing. Dakota Johnson confesses her dream man is Jamie Dornan. Shocking moment leaves him speechless. There were screenshots, slowed-down clips, side-by-side photos of their faces from the interview. Every entertainment outlet, every social media platform, every fan account was ablaze. Some called it romantic, others called it betrayal. Jamie rubbed his eyes, scrolling through the chaos until one particular tweet made him stop. He looked at her like a man who just heard the truth he'd been running from. He dropped the phone, leaned back, and stared at the ceiling. The words wouldn't leave him. Across the city, Dakota Johnson sat in her kitchen with a cup of coffee she couldn't bring herself to drink. Her manager had called 3 times, begging her to make a statement, to deny, to clarify, to say anything. But she couldn't, because what she'd said wasn't planned. It wasn't a stunt, it was real. She hadn't meant to confess it, not so publicly. But when the question came, who's your dream man? She couldn't lie anymore. It wasn't about fantasy or perfection. It was about truth, about someone who had changed her life, whether or not he ever realized it. By noon, Jamie's silence had become the story. Why isn't he responding? Does he feel the same? The speculation grew louder by the hour. Some fans defended him. Others accused him of cowardice. Amelia Warner, his wife, became an unwilling target. Trolls flooded her social media with cruel messages. Inside their home, Amelia kept her composure, but she was hurting. One of her friends said later, she wasn't angry, she was sad. Because she knew Dakota's words weren't fiction. There was something real between them, even if no one ever crossed a line. That evening, Jamie disappeared from the public eye. He turned off his phone and drove for hours, escaping into the Irish countryside. He ended up at a small inn overlooking the sea, the same place he'd stayed years ago before 50 Shades changed his life forever. There, in the stillness, he tried to make sense of everything. He thought about Dakota, about the laughter, the long nights of filming, the way she understood him without explanation. She'd seen him at his most vulnerable, long before the world knew his name. And yet, she'd never judged him. And then he thought about Amelia, the woman who had stood by him, raised their children, loved him quietly through every storm. She was his home. 2 different loves, 2 different lives. He spent the night alone, no phone, no lights, just the sound of the ocean and the question he'd avoided for years. What did Dakota really mean? The next morning, he had his answer. While the world continued to spiral with gossip, Dakota Johnson released a short statement through her publicist. It wasn't defensive, nor was it dramatic. It simply read, "My words were about gratitude, not romance. My dream man is someone who made me believe in myself when I didn't, someone who taught me how to be brave, even when it hurt. I'll always be thankful for that friendship." Within minutes, the tone of the conversation changed. The tabloids tried to twist it, but fans began to see it differently. Clips of her crying during the interview resurfaced, not as scandal, but as vulnerability. One comment summed it up best: she wasn't confessing love, she was confessing respect. When Jamie finally returned home, Amelia was waiting. She looked tired, but calm. She clarified everything. She said softly, "You should read it." He nodded, glancing at the printed statement she'd left on the kitchen counter. As he read, his chest tightened. He realized that Dakota hadn't embarrassed him. She had honored him, in her own, messy, emotional way. That night, Jamie called her. It was the first time they'd spoken since the interview. She answered quietly, "Hi." "Hi," he said, pausing. "You didn't have to explain yourself to anyone." Dakota's voice cracked slightly. "I know, but I needed to. For me, for you." There was a long silence. Then Jamie said, "You left me speechless that day. Not because I didn't know what to say, but because I didn't want to ruin something honest by overthinking it." Dakota exhaled shakily. "Then maybe we're okay." He smiled faintly. "Yeah, we're okay." Neither said goodbye. They didn't need to. Some connections don't need constant words to survive. They just live quietly, beyond the noise, in the truth only two people can share. Weeks later, when Jamie was asked about the infamous moment during a red carpet interview, he smiled and said, "Dakota's one of the most genuine people I know. She speaks from the heart, and sometimes, that's the bravest thing any of us can do." It wasn't a confession. It wasn't denial. It was something purer, mutual respect, wrapped in unspoken affection. And for the first time since the chaos began, the world saw their story for what it truly was, not a scandal, but a bond born from honesty, trust, and a kind of love that didn't need to be romantic to be real.